This is dope.
Shout out to Monica for sharing that awesome dengue fever tunes. Let's go. Welcome everyone. My name is Kat, coming at you from Oakland/Ohlone land. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I will be today's host for the Southeast Asian poetry reading. Who's excited? Share through your reactions or share down in the chat. We love community love. And this is presented and hosted to you by Eastwinds. Eastwind Books of Berkeley is a multicultural Asian American go-to Bay Area bookstore and multicultural center that sets the stage for so many Asian American and people of color, like authors, artists, and poets that we have here today. So our first poet that we are hosting is Krysada, who is a Lao American professional, dancer, award-winning poet, engineer, and photographer, and coming at you from San Diego, California. He is also a physics and astrophysics double major with a minor in creative writing from UC Berkeley. He published his debut poetry book, Dance Among Elephants, and his second poetry book, Every Passing Minute. And so today we are fortunate enough to hear some of his poems from his books.
Hey, hello everyone. Can you hear me? Yeah? Great. Okay, Sabaidi everybody. My name is Krysada Phounsiri. Pronouns he, him. I'm on Kumeyaay land out of San Diego, California. So without further ado, I want to start getting into the poems. Let's see. So, you know, with all the anti-Asian violence and rhetoric that's been going on, I felt like I needed to start off with this poem. It's something I wrote back in 2012, but I feel like it's still very much relevant today. Yeah. So it's called Chink in the Armor. Chink in the armor. I am a chink, by definition of the slur, slinging from generations of Orientals before me. The chink who mines through a gold rush California for $6 a month and gets taxed $3. The chink who could not legally marry anyone except chinks before 1967. The chink sent to internment camps because the army cannot tell the difference between any Asian chink. The chink whose name echoes from the end of Ronald Evans' baseball bat to Vincent Chin's skull. From the ears of Private Danny Chen, dragged across yards of gravel by his sergeant. Rocks pelt his body while comrades yell, chink, gook, dragon lady. He blasts his face afterwards, shotgun blasts ringing, suppress his hearing, escaping the echoes. The chink that people call a gook, the Lao, Cambodian, and Vietnamese refugees forgotten in a war of Rambo versus little yellow Viet Cong men. The chink who yells ching chong ling long ting tong in libraries across state campuses, where my hard work and Confucian principles makes me study my model minority ass off, only to fail at physics and math, then somehow graduate with enough words of knowledge of words to inform you, Mr. Federico, that your remark exhausts the stupidity of every human being whose ignorance costs a life, taxed with racial beating. You should mend the battered pieces of your own armor. So, chink in the armor. That's because someone said that to Jeremy Lin. All right, next poem. This poem is called A Bomb Does Not Discriminate. I was intrigued by that term about bombs and discrimination. It was from an interview by a terrorist saying, you know, bombs do not discriminate for those that they kill. A bomb does not discriminate. Car just passed by. A bomb does not discriminate. It detonates, blasts skin, does not care what color. A bomb does not discriminate, cares not what's for dinner, lamb vindaloo curry, sticky rice, ramen noodles, or porridge. Bombs smashed past windows, engulfs limbs in dust before the oven warms up. A bomb grasps children by the face, swap beds with iron tombs, feed mouths with fragments of lead, flame and gasoline, boiling flesh, just in time for night prayer. A bomb does not discriminate, does not care if a Muslim cries to Allah or if a Buddhist chants Sahtu in tears or a Christian sighs amen at a funeral. The planes still sob, bombs still smash, wiping human tears along with their bodies. It will fall, gash necks open, fry blood in any city, any home, cares not when to explode. Hiroshima, 1945, all of the 1970s in Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, 2011, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, 2017 in Syria. Still counting, bombs fly through time, been colorblind for centuries. A bomb does not discriminate.
Okay, love you. We'll see you there.
A bomb does not discriminate. It burns, bites with steel fangs. Napalm melts, sings the coming of death. No segregation guaranteed. A bomb does not discriminate, so why do you? All right. The next one, the next poem is titled Metal Man, and it's the idea about UXOs, unexploded ordinances. For those that don't know, Laos is the most bombed country per capita in the history of humankind. And there are still bombs that are still unexploded on the floor, still killing people in many towns in Laos. And this all took place during the Secret War. So the poem is called Metal Man. Hey, Metal Man, have you heard? Children at Sian Kwang picked a few pieces of you. And today, a mother found piles of your bone-breaking steel. Do not forget, Metal Man, you saw pieces of flesh shred upwards, sharp-nose slice into feet of their friends, now legless, last week. You do not care because you come from another place. Knock down village walls with your bomber planes, you rain metal from the sky, a monsoon robbing rice fields of harvest. Metal Man, look at that woman whose leg you bite off. She will never dance thanks to you. That child whose face you claw, he cannot recognize life through his eyes, staring back at the mirror. They feared Picasso, ghost of the night, with intestines dangling as they float upwards their next human meal. The children see you, no longer fear Picasso. You brought her to life before their eyes. A mother floats in the air from you exploding. Her intestines dangle. You force everyone to witness. You are real, Metal Man, yet the folks do not care. You left pieces and they grab them, mold and cast in a furnace. Guess how they change you? You become a bowl they eat out of, a pair of earrings fluorescing in the night, a necklace they sell since you failed to flamethrow their bodies. They sell you to make money, buy food and eat off bowls made from you, dropped from your planes. They claim you now, middleman, till the last bit of your composition melts into bracelets and rings. Remind Kun Lao, you are not welcome, will never be. They will never be sorry, middleman, to see you in parts dismantled as you dismembered limbs. You better be sorry. If not, you will melt anyway. Kun Lao claimed you. Kun Lao claimed you now. Okay. The next poem is called Buffalo Boy. And shout outs to my father. He retired yesterday. I love the man very much. He just closed down his restaurant, and he kind of gave himself the nickname Buffalo Boy. So it's dedicated to my father, Buffalo Boy. He, a buffalo boy, hooves imprinted on the rice fields, drags the cart faster than tractors, row by row, a matrix of rice. Rows of ink from his printer, dragged by the cartridge, line by line. He creates calendars and business cards. That is his rice field. A buffalo boy who treks along the old days, had gloom at dusk, heat swelling at the surface of rice paddies. He tells me of his world. Back then, no technology, just buffalo. His printer beckons, spits out paper with designs imprinted. He thinks of mud and the buffalo who walk in it. Buffalo boy muscles, monstrous at a glance. His hands are stained, a motif of various dyes. Buffalo boy, who sees the trek and the tech that transforms the rice matrix. Machines carry heaps throughout town. The buffalo do not pull much anymore. Printing jobs do not pull much either. The ink fades as AMOLED screens and Gorilla Glass capture more eyes. Print jobs dry like the off-season of rice, yet he treks along line by line, row by row, a world of motors, diesel engines, 4K resolution on a phone, flashing worlds of information outside printed paper. Sometimes a world still needs a buffalo to drag the carts in a world where they lag. Or do we hurry to catch the photons, receive them on sight, like rice in our mouths? Let us not choke. Yeah, so my dad used to be a printer, then the digital world took over, then he ran a restaurant. So shout out to him. Okay, Ode to Tamakung. This is my last poem. So I love eating food. I'm not a great cook, and I love Lao food, and I always try to represent Lao food in spaces where folks should know more about it. So tamakung is papaya salad. If you never tried it, hit me up. I will tell you all the good spots. All right, ode to tamakung. I bite you, and you bite back, showing my tongue who is boss. Fat, 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 papaya strips tossed into the sock. Olympic medalists in diving, garden spices got daggers of heat, waiting to stab our mouths, but it hurts so good, cause that sock hosts a party. Red peppers paint the town red, green peppers too. Sliced baby tomatoes present, fish sauce and padak bring the funk. They introduce themselves and everybody knows when they arrive, our noses never forget that smell. Salt evens the vibe, I'm tasting you. From the fires of spices, you burn in my heart when you enter my mouth. I pinch kaunio and papaya salad, pop it in my mouth. Taste combines secret war anger with sabai laughter of Laos. Each ingredient a garden in our kingdom, hoisted to the docks of our mouths. Keep them ships of papaya salad coming. They so spicy. Our sweat works up its own sweat. Our tears fall down, too hot inside our eyes after that bite. You wake me up, can only calm down with gulps of beer, but padak remains a resonance in my tongue. You bite back to tell me, you are here to stay, and I love how we bring you to our parties, forever thumbing, drumming. Spirit of Laos dances with you. Keep biting us back. Remind us where we come from. All right, and that's my reading for this section. So thank you, everyone. Khop-chai lalai. And I will mute myself muting now. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, Krysada. Those were such powerful readings. And I also really love papaya salad. So if you have not had the chance, if you're in Oakland, please visit Champa Garden or Vientiane restaurant, and they have awesome flavors. Or any like Cambodian, Thai, Lao restaurants have amazing. Anyway, I'm digressing. Now, our other poet of today is Professor Monica Sok. They have their debut poetry collection, A Nail in the Evening Hangs On, and it uses poetry to reshape a family's history and memory about the Khmer Rouge regime. Memory that is both real and imagined, according to a child of refugees. Driven by myth making and fables, the book seeks to reclaim the Cambodian narrative with tenderness and an imagination that moves toward wholeness and possibility. And after Monica's reading, we will also be followed after her two former students and a fellow folk from SASC, the Southeast Asian Student Coalition. Woo! And we will also have the chance for the entire audience to dive into conversation with our fellow featured poets and writers today. So look forward to that. And up on the stage is Monica.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Krysada, I really appreciate your poems and the photographs. I can't wait to get into a conversation with you at the end of the program so we can chat more about your poems. And anyways, I'm so thrilled to be here and so grateful that my students, Jesse and Ethan, have also decided to join me today too. I'm going to begin with a poem called The Weaver. She threaded the loom with one strand of her long silver hair, which might have kept growing until she was done, which might have fallen out. But I would come in and sit beside her on the cushion without her noticing, and she would continue. Every day I saw this old woman weaving at her looms, rivers and lakes underneath her hair, the bottom full of silt. I could see it if I reached with a comb, and that was when she'd look at me. Under her hair, she kept her oldest son, who was out for a morning swim, with swallows swooping down to touch the water. It made her happy as she worked on silk dresses, and her hair never ran out. Sometimes, when she was tired, she'd tie it up and let all the tired animals around her house drink from her head. This next poem is called Sistina, and yeah, at the end words of the Sistina should be like at the very end, but everything is hidden. This is a poem about my mother and her sisters. Sistina. There's a sister who works so hard, she never talks. A sister who screams when she hears dogs bark. A sister whose breasts have grown dry. A sister who always hides. There's a time comrades come to the hut. They can't tell who's who. How many are you? Where's the other one hiding? That sister stays close, somewhere in a hole closed off with dirt. Sometimes she sits with a sister whose baby lacked milk. In her place of hiding, she cries, thinks of comforting words, but her mouth goes dry. In a far village where works a sister who never talks, the sunset. Finally, it's her chance, time to run back, but this time an owl screeches. She closes her eyes. She pretends she's the one who can fly. That sister, so quiet. How does that sister stay quiet? Biting her lips, she goes into hiding. Between her teeth, the skin of a snake, hiding like a chasm in a field, a hole in the door to spy on the time, dark knot high up in a greasy tree, little dry well in a forgotten yard where sounds of smoke and fighting drive close. One sister soils her sarong. To wash it, the sisters search for water, to find, full of air, a balloon which, swollen in the river, makes the youngest scream and cry, she who holds hands walking around the open eyes, her own face hiding. Then the sister, who never speaks, begins to speak. I want to go home, she says, but home is not close at all. No salty plum juice, no rice or fish dried. That dream is dry. And tracing with a stick, a sister who closes a circle around them in the dirt, hiding them safely inside. This is a circle, a time warp around us sisters, so we can go back to when we girls were not hiding, when fear didn't dry us up, and we could be whoever we were, dear sisters. When I read that poem, I certainly think about drawing that circle, that time warp around all my sisters, all Asian American women, all our elders. And so I just want to say thank you to Krysada for talking a little bit about anti-Asian violence in the opening of this reading. So my heart goes out to everybody who's also really shook and struggling in the last several weeks. I'm going to continue reading from my book. This is a poem called Song of an Orphaned Soldier Clearing Landmines. And I just really appreciate the poems that Krysada shared so that we could be in conversation in this way. Song of an Orphaned Soldier Clearing Landmines. When I saw my father walking, I kicked the road, convinced metal brains at his feet. The humming they heard was a knife cutting, not a living man's voice. They believed me. Like snakes in grass, they clicked their tongues. The gods I met promised me they could make a life happen after what had happened if I knew who my father was. I clapped my hands to signal a stream, and my father followed my sound. He drank and bathed as I cleared the landmines, and I hoped it was him. He slept in the jungle, dreamed jaguars circling, though it was nothing but fire burning. Close to the basak, I climbed mango trees to feed him. Along the way, I waved my arms, no. To himself, my father said, yes. No, I did not bury the bodies nobody had prayed for. There are things in this world we must make one another see. My father took me gently, each one of us gently. He took us to the flames humming, my children, my children. 3 provinces I traveled with him like this, only to take him back to Prayang where he found his sisters. If my father were to tell this, he would tell you, he carried me over his shoulders to a nearby village, that no danger touched him, and that the gods were watching. They wanted to see me live. I have 2 more poems. This is a poem of my mother. It's called The Woman Who Was Small, Not Because the World Expanded. The elephants came out from the fields and carried me toward Chambak, toward a village doused in fires, so that in the pond fish had fried, and looking at that dead water was a woman I had seen running home each evening with a bucket in her hand. Always her speed was the hair that flew in my face, always her feet sounding of tanks which made dogs bark and flee, footprints deep as trenches in the grass. This is the woman who had shrunk so small when the planes came. Nobody could ever find her. And since more planes, she stayed as small as a spoon, and the world seemed to enlarge though nothing had changed. And when she saw me, she hid, threw pebbles at my ankles until I bowed down and easily picked her up, folding her inside a banana leaf. She slept well. She who is my mother sleeping off the world again, whose person I hold in my hand when she wants to be held. And the last poem I'm going to read, I always like to finish my readings with this poem. It's just so like, I feel like it's like a kind of hug at the very end. But this is definitely a poem about my father teaching me how to read. ABC for Refugees. Cherubie D, how does a man who doesn't read English well know that cherubie dumb? Those aren't really words, BD, but birds. Cherubie dumb, he stumbles, reading to me by the sliding glass door, Cherubie D, through which I watch my brother play in the dumb yard. Cherubie D, cherubie dumb, like how my father says, fine then, leave. My mother shouts, stupid, dumb. We live in a small BD nest too, 1 hallway, 2 be dumb, slam doors. Birds, what are birds? Thanks to my father reading with me, I have more feathers. THE, first word he ever taught me to pluck. It is a word used all the time. Cherub, cherubidum, the mail, the mailbox, the school bus, the. He asks me to read the mail, not birds, mail. If you don't read this, you will turn into birds. And I read it to him the best I can. The end, a feather, two feathers, the end. Mother, mother, repeat after me. Cherubidee, cherubidum. We read together before bedtime. Thank you. And I just wanted to say that I'm so grateful for everyone who's here. I'm really, really excited that that Ethan is reading after me. And I just wanted to say happy birthday. Today is Ethan's birthday, and this is us. This is us pre-pandemic, like literally like before, like right before everything hit. And yes, love you very much. We did a reading with like Human Win, and it was just so much fun. So I'm just so honored and grateful that Ethan is gonna join us right after this, and that Jessie will also be reading too after this. So anyways, happy birthday, Ethan. Please show some love in the chat for Ethan. Thank you so much. And I want Ethan to just go ahead and shine today and just have a really great day. So please send some good energy this way. But yeah, thank you. I look forward to hearing Ethan read now.
Oh my God, I'm gonna tear up. I don't know if I am being spotlighted because I'm on my own Zoom, but I'm going to trust the process and trust that it is working. Okay, there. Now I have to face myself. For those of you who don't have Monica's book, please get it. I have my copy over here. It is very treasured. And her book launch was the last book launch I attended pre-COVID. So many wonderful, warm memories. And my favorite poem of the book is the one that she read, Song of an Orphan Soldier Clearing Landmines. And I just want to hold collective space today in our grief and our mourning. And I always think about the line, there are things in this world we must make one another see. And as a kind of vision of poetry, as historical witnessing, as collective witnessing, as not allowing our grief to be silenced. And so I want to invite you all into that space today as we are grieving. There are things in this world we must make one another see, and that we can hold and we can show and we can be brave for. And so I'm going to start. My first poem is about the Absanyo, a Filipino activist who hunger struck that past tense in Poland in the wake of Super Typhoon Haiyan, which struck the Philippines. Yeb Sanyo's hunger strike. On the 10th day, I sip water from an iron bowl. Spam over rice, silog's cup ramen, then news of the typhoon. My brother in Leyte picking through stale bodies. My stomach tightens, rattles. Starvation isn't new to us. Fields burn in my lolo's stories, his laugh bitter as coffee grounds. Now you're begging for their help. In Laguan, Americans slit Carabao's throats, but I won't beg. My second poem is called Parachute Kids. Parachute Kids. Lay a dough on cherry blossom tree, counts to 6 in Mandarin. Harpsichord strings buzzsaw through my headphones. In San Francisco Chinatown, an old man on a tire swing reads newsprint filled with red declarations. I think of the podcast you sent me, Hua Tiao bringing down a dynasty, as you cried crossing a Vancouver intersection. It's been 5 months. Our ancestors are retired. The teacup I bought you still wrapped in wax paper. In Pittsburgh, the microwavable dumplings were filled with glass noodles, so we went downtown for the real thing. Leia sings, I don't know where you've been. I think you'll like my sunset. It's spring in Montreal, wet season in Guangzhou. My grandfather's on a respirator. Your sister practices the piano, waiting for you to come back from your college town. And my last poem is called After Wonder. After Wonder. The milk tea shop dimmed its lights, as if the staff were gently asking us, its final customers, to leave. Dark purple shone on your cheek, emanation from the storefront sign, its neon cursive. You were telling me about your play, set after the completion of the Taj, the apocryphal moment when its patron ordered the hands of its builders cut off, so that nothing could be made to match its beauty. The cast, two guards set in charge of the mutilation, one whom you disdained and loved. In bed, not knowing his face, I imagined his hands, carved of ivory, sculpted the perfection of form, omitting the necessity of origins. Like how in a dream things appear without causes, maybe because we have mutilated the causes. After he graduated, you agreed on a pact of silence, which he sometimes broke. You brought it up as we washed dishes one morning, how next time you'd find someone who made you feel wanted, and again at the counter as you sipped at your drink, as I watched your cheek to avoid your eyes. I was afraid. I wanted you to touch me with hands that could wear marble from stone. Out of any street corner, the Taj, spires and pools, forests and lilies, as we talked along ocean after the boba shop closed, all the parking meters swallowed by fog. When we returned to the apartment, I switched off the lights, and we talked in the dark about music and breakfast, until you turned over and yawned, until I turned over and thought about what I wouldn't say, how one holds the other's hands and then removes them tenderly. Thank you.
You so much for reading, Ethan, and I'm so grateful to be in this space with everyone else who's reading. It's really incredible. So with that, I'll be reading something new that I drafted over quarantine when I was thinking about how there's absolutely no way that I'm the first queer person in my family, and so I wrote about queer ancestors, and I think fiction can sometimes offer tenderness that cushions the loneliness of the real world. Okay. We danced in the graveyard, our feet quieting the susurrus grass, the only other living thing, sat down when our legs felt heavy with that thought. The graveyard was just a transient stop, a way to fill our time until we could get home and put fat in our bellies without having to work for it. We would have preferred the beach, even with all of its stingrays, or the park that was a couple blocks down from our house, but the parents in the Mesa houses who could afford to leave their porch lights on all night didn't like the sight of unattended children. And I once complained to my mom that I wanted to be like the other kids, the normal kids, the white kids, the kids with two parents, the kids who ate things like beets and got to buy and put things in those luxurious green plastic silhouettes that screamed organic on them. You want to go to a real park? Okay, go ahead, my mother said, her wooden spoon inching closer to me. And when you come back, no more house, no more parent. Only later did I realize that having a single mother is a punishable offense. And by the way, your park is called a memorial park, my mom reminded me. And I should have been more grateful that she let me out to play and didn't make me come home and help her crush peanuts with mortar and pestle or wash small slugs off of mint leaves. After I told Allie this story, she started making a huge ordeal about our trips, packing extra oranges or fruit in her backpack. She said our park was enough. Allie was the adventurous type. She had us stop at the bagel shop that had a bee on their billboard and ask the Cambodian owner if there was anything old or leftover. And we never said it, but we really wanted the freshly squeezed juice. We wanted to see her load up that machine, watch the orange balls drop, get mechanically sliced, see the orange guts get separated and pressed into a clear cup that we got to inhale. She never gave us the juice, but every once in a while, we got some crunchy bread with the best strawberry cream cheese that money couldn't buy. Allie told me that the locals called her cold because she refused to throw in a couple words with their orders. Americans, Allie would say, bagel bag crinkling in her hand, and I impulsively nodded in American too. Allie and I walked the rows of black granite to get to our usual spot, my grandmother's grave. Overgrown leaves tickled our ankles as our sneakers sunk into patches of forgotten grass. The park was still, save for the occasional griever whose hands were folded to their nose like a prayer. And we traversed the ground, looking briefly down, trying to remember the names. Remember the names, we reminded ourselves. And I thought of the way my grandmother used to say that Americans love to lock up their people. I thought of the graveyards I had visited, the ones with fences, with flowers, and were in faraway parts of the city. My grandmother told me not to forget about her. Do not forget about her. She wanted to be cremated and distributed amongst her children and passed on for generations. She told us, press me into a potted tree, or press me into a diamond and wear me around that neck, she cackled, pointing to my mother's collarbones, small shelves that held sunken skin. None of that happened. Instead, my mother gave her ashes to the woman at the open casket funeral. And nobody wanted to directly look at that woman, but they kept her in their peripheries. Some people couldn't help but whisper to one another. The woman looked tough, fierce, careful as her perfectly lined lipstick. She had red lips, the shade my mom would never let me put on my fingernails because her friends told her that red nails were only for girls that were asking for it. And when I asked her what they were asking for, she told me she had never asked. The woman sat alone, waited until the monks recited the rituals, and then went to the casket, the same time as us. Her lips turned into rumbling stones, a red babbling brook. She swept my grandmother's hair to the side and stroked her cheek too, my grandmother's mole disappearing under her finger. My mother cleared her throat. The woman looked at us, a small stream caught in the corner of her eyes. You should have buried her in silk, she said to my mother, and stepped away. And I looked at my grandmother's body, held tightly by an American dress suit. Her lips were blanched in artificial pink. I whispered to my mother, asking who the woman was. Your grandmother's special friend. But if anyone asks, just say she's an auntie. And I took one last look at my ye, my ma, my beloved Her body was puffed too tight. She looked suffocated. I told myself she was embalmed with honey. The jacket she wore was given to her by her favorite lover. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Well, first of all, I just want to acknowledge the talent and the poignant pieces of art that was shared today. Yeah, I don't have much to say, but I felt it in my soul, and I think words wouldn't do it justice anyways. But thank you so much for having me here. My name is Anvi Fan. I go by she, they, he pronouns, and I'm currently on Tongva land, otherwise known as LA, Orange County. What was I going to say? Oh, I'm a third year at UC Berkeley, double majoring in political science and Asian American Asian diaspora studies, and minoring in the Korean language. I am here from the Southeast Asian Student Coalition. We're an organization on campus, founded in the year 2000 with Professor Kataria and I kind of just wanted to read two pieces that I am submitting to the Southeast Asian anthology this year. And these two pieces are also a part of my own personal poetry collection. I don't have plans to publish it anytime soon, but I hope to one day. Thank you for the support in the chat. Just to give y'all a heads up, the second part of this poem is actually, part of it is in Vietnamese and I will translate it. But yeah, just bear with me for a second. Okay. Hearts around me are pounding and so is my own. There's a plastic bag ever so slightly cushioning my knees, but it's not enough. They still hurt. My feet and hands are tingling as chaos erupts around me. A symphony of Zoom calls, video games, and jumbled voices saying, yes, no, is the midterm too much? Tomorrow we will. My pupils are dilating and my palms are growing sweaty, and thoughts of uncertainty are rushing to my head. I want it, but I'm scared. What if it's not the right time? But urgently, a voice in my head whispers, but if not now, when? My lips are dry and sticky with stale milk tea and grass jelly residue on them. Riss yanks my ponytail and everyone's eyes fixate on me. I sip my boba more urgently. I don't feel much, just gentle pulling. It's the sound of the scissors that get me. Every snip breaks a chain. The reliable daughter, the gender dysphoria, the doubt, the hurt. I feel it slowly falling to my feet, poking at my skin as if begging to be let in, but I resist. I refuse. Everything becomes more vibrant. So just background on this poem. Actually, last October, I shaved my head. And it's because I had been struggling with gender dysphoria for a really long time, and my long hair was a really big part of that. And so it was a very life-changing moment for me. And so I wrote this piece of poem after that. So can we go to the next? Thank you. And then this poem is titled For You, and you'll see why. So for you. Winter is here, like the lifeless trees, or sorry, like the leafless trees, my head is hairless. But just as freeing as it feels when shackles are broken, I too am liberated. I am free from the confines of gender and culture. My nose has more than 2 holes, my ears more than 4. I guess I can smell and hear better. The winter may be winter, and baby, it may be cold outside, but not here, not in my heart. My heart is a growing fire, my soul is warm, the source of my serotonin and dopamine is limitless, it's infinite. The sky is no longer my ceiling. I'm here, I'm me, and I love that. Nothing can stop me, is that true? No, nothing can stop me, nothing can hurt me at all. Nothing but you. Không giống ai, mập như heo. Con có thương mẹ không? Tháo cái bông mũi ra đi con. Ngoan đi, nghe lời mẹ, mẹ thương. Nhưng mẹ thương ai? Who do you love? Who do you hurt? Am I me, or am I who you want me to be? Am I for you, or am I for me? Who can I be? Is there a me, or is there only you? Who decides? Who gets to hurt? Who gets to cry? Who do we mourn? And who has to die? Yeah, so this poem was directly addressed to my mom. So I grew up being my mother's daughter. She kind of molded me the way she wanted me to be, you know, super girly, pink, all of that. And my long hair was actually a result of like her raising me. She wanted me to be a ballerina, you know, put my hair in a bun, you know, that like, I guess that was my mom's fantasy for me, and I didn't turn out to be that way. And so I'm just going to translate the Vietnamese parts. So I'll start with Không giống ai, mập như heo. This is a saying that means like, oh, you're not like anybody, like you're basically an outcast and you're fat as a pig. Con có thương mẹ không is, do you love me? Like, do you love your mom? Tháo cái bông mũi ra đi con is like, take out your nose piercing. Ngoan đi, nghe lời mẹ is like, be good, be filial, listen to me. Mẹ thương. And if you do that, I'll love you. And then my question to her in Vietnamese is, nhưng mẹ thương ai? Is like, who do you love? Do you love the person that you created, or do you love me for who I am destined to be? So yeah, yeah, it's just, I feel like when people move to college, especially like first generation college students, Southeast Asian college students at that, I've been able to find like this world of like freedom and like a space to like explore myself and explore my identity and like find who I truly am, right? And then with COVID, moving back home, I feel like part of that freedom has been ripped away from me, and I have the pressures to live up to what my mom needs me to be or wants me to be. Those two things can go interchangeably, I feel. So yeah, that was a poem dedicated to her and kind of just reflection on my own relationship with my mother. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, Anvi, for saying your pieces. They're I am doing my best to let my tears out, but they're not. So my tear ducts are just holding up to the brim. So thank you so much for all your readings. And now that we have absorbed all the emotions that and the heart that our fellow poets and writers have poured to us, it is now time for an open discussion. We're dedicating at least like 10 minutes for everyone who has spoken to share their thoughts about each other's works, or anybody in the audience, you can ask your questions away in the chat or in person. You can feel free to raise your hand. There's the raise your hand at the reactions on the bottom right. And if you want to ask your questions to any of our fellow like guest poets and guest writers today, please do. But the floor is open to anyone.
I just want to say thank you to everyone who has shared their works. I'm so curious to know, I would love to hear questions from the audience, but I'm also like really curious to know what your creative process is like during the pandemic. I think for me, I've been taking it really slow and just trying to make sure that I'm like in my body and trying to also like incorporate this kind of physical experience with my own work. So I might like write one word a day and I'll count that as something that I did that was creative. And sometimes I write past that word. But I'm so curious to know what everyone is doing during this time.
So for creative process during the pandemic, honestly, I think I wrote like 2 poems max this past year. They were kind of quarantine related and also unfortunately, you know, anti-Asian hate or hate related. I don't know. I'm very much hyper productive or creative, but I felt like this past year I just needed to really slow down, really enjoy life for what it was. Being kind of stuck at home, usually I'm traveling, I'm out and about, even on a regular day. You know, I'm dancing, I'm training, doing some kind of photo shoot, but I really felt like it was good for me to slow down and shut up my brain, shut off my brain, and really just let things marinate. And that way, I feel like I need that urgency to continue to create and write, and that's pretty much how I've been feeling recently. Any other writers?
I think for me, something that Monica said actually changed my whole perspective in quarantine. And it was that, like, even when the physical writing is not happening, the writing is always happening. And so for me, I have just been trying to be in my body and trying to live. And every once in a while, a sentence will pop in my head and it'll start my whole process. But other than that, it's a lot of just trying to take in everything that's happening. Some days it just feels like living is, perpetual grief. But for me, it's just trying to rest a lot and just knowing that the writing is happening, even when it's not happening.
Right. I've been trying to tell folks too that you have to be who you are, and you don't have to take this time to create just because you somehow feel like you have all the time in the world, which some may feel that way, but the whole idea of being in your own body, I think, is very powerful, right? Like you just need to exist to be who you are, and I am pretty spontaneous when it comes to the creative process lately because I'm a very feely person when it comes to creating stuff. So like I'll have a line that pops in my head, and then I'll go on my phone and I'll be like, oh, okay, this is a dope line for like maybe another poem, and I just kind of fragment all my poems together, and then from there I just free flow it. And you're right, sometimes just sitting and then thinking about things is good enough for now, you know. So yeah, thanks for saying that.
Also, Krysada, because we are talking about like being physical in a creative process. Like you're a dancer, you also like incorporated photographs in the slide. So do you want to talk a little bit about how dance influences your writing too?
Yeah. So I love dancing. I think it's funny because I always tell my friends I don't like to talk much. I like to express myself in ways without words, to be honest. And I think poetry is where I really try to be concrete and upfront and vulnerable. When it comes to other art forms that I express, I try to do my best to express without words, right? And dancing gave me that confidence. Dancing is the reason why a lot of my identity gets explored, and a lot of where my strength comes from. And it's very music based. So music is a huge inspiration to me. A lot of times I'm reacting to music. A lot of times music is the energy that makes me move. And my creative process comes from thinking about concepts of body movement with respect to music. And a lot of my poems, I try to have that kind of rhythm in my writing, especially in the free form context. So there's a term in dancing, it's called freestyling, and I always love to freestyle. So once I get the technique down, once I get the techniques that excite me, I just freestyle those techniques, and whatever pops up is what I'll try to catch. So I always try to be aware during my dance training. And that's how I kind of bring it into poetry. Now for photography, because it's visual, I really try to show a story, maybe juxtaposition, maybe contrast, maybe just invoke a feeling by someone looking at the photo. So it's composition is really important for me. And then I like to have the art medium stand strong alone. But then, as I've gotten older, I started to realize, like, everything is so intertwined in my life that I should start just incorporating all of that a lot more. Not to just add on to it, but to show like the full version of myself. And I think photography really completes that picture for me, because I'm trying to use all senses as an artist. And I think when you actually see photos, it's really blatant, right? And when you see me dance live, it's like really, it's in your face. And with poetry, I try to take a step back and have you read the words that I write, and hopefully they all work together.
Yeah, you had like a really badass photo of your dad, actually. So congrats to your dad. He retired recently, so that was really dope. And I want to give space to like Anvi and Ethan if y'all wanted to chime in too for that question, or if y'all just wanted to talk about something else. Open. And I know like the audience hasn't asked any questions, but I just want to shout out to Cher, who said productivity is a capitalist sham. So thanks for saying that.
Yeah, thank you.
I also want to ask Jessica, because someone in the audience asked before, do you have a chapbook out? Like, where else can people find your readings, writings? I know today we have highlighted the works of Krysada and Monica, but Ethan, Jessica, where can we find some of your works?
It's all forthcoming.
I actually had like a comic book that used to have been carried, but I think they're sold now because I only gave them 5 copies. But I can but if anyone is interested in a dark fantasy comic, you can just like try to find me and hit me up, I guess. I'm gonna just link the Eastwind entry on the chat. I do owe Eastwind more copies, I think.
Wait, you're the author? Sorry, I never made the connection. Oh my God, I am meeting the creator of Doorkeeper. Hello. I think Monica also brought up a really good question, because I think during quarantine. And Krysada, I love how you find creativity throughout your multiple creative outlets. Like for me, I love to cook, I love to eat, but I also love fashion. And so I sometimes find inspiration from each of my creative outlets. And I was wondering, like, for also Ethan, and this is open to everyone, what do you believe are some of your creative outlets that have inspired all your other ones? Because what we've heard today and seen today are your poetry and writing, but where were the sources of inspiration from that? Was it like from your other hobbies, from like family? I'm very curious.
Other writers want to answer that first? Like, I don't want to talk too much.
Wait, for some reason, I thought that question was for Ethan. No? I don't know.
But I can go.
I mean, I was curious more to learn about the spam over rice and like all the other meals you mentioned, because I was like, yo, that felt so familiar.
Yeah.
Like I was like,
Yeah.
it felt like I traveled back into like my earlier like elementary school days. Like those were like literally my breakfast.
Yeah, no, I think that, like, I think for me, it's been about taking a break during the pandemic. And I think that because, like, I actually, shortly after I worked with Monica at Stanford, I was having to kind of rediscover my relationship with poetry because I had been doing therapy for a few months, and it was kind of uncovering the ways in which I had subconsciously been relying on poetry as a kind of emotional catharsis, which it didn't necessarily like need to fill in my life anymore. And so it was kind of scary, even as it was really exciting, because I don't see poetry as therapy in any straightforward way. It's a very, like, I see it as a demanding craft and as something I have like a relationship of deep love and respect for and with. And but there was still a part of me that kind of leaned on it in that way. And so the pandemic actually opened up this space where I just tried not writing for a while because I wasn't sure what questions I was trying to answer with my writing necessarily, now that I was working with my therapist. And I'm glad I gave it that space, because I also started realizing how that I'd been writing so regularly for so many years because I'd built a really good ethic that I was proud of myself for. It had been a really long time since I just stopped and asked myself, why is it that I write? Like, what is it that brings me to the page? And I think the pandemic really gave me the space to think through that. And so when I'm still figuring out what it means to come back to the page, but I think that I'm finding a lot more freedom now that it's like I don't feel like I need to go to my poetry to feel a connection to my own worth. And I think that opens up all other kinds of possibilities. And I think recently I've just been trying not to listen to my inner critic, as I've been trying to just like write around what's happened in Atlanta and really holding space for just, whatever comes out on the page onto the page, and that's okay. And that is a kind of relationship to my writing I am trying to rediscover, as a way of holding testimony and immediacy. So that was some thoughts about what process has looked like over the past few months.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ethan. Thanks for sharing that and reflecting. Yeah, I just also want to add, like, that in your answer, I heard like wonder, and curiosity too, in the way that you're moving towards the poems and language. So I'm just so grateful that I got to share space with y'all today. And just hear like Krysada's poems for the first time on V-Read, and like Jesse, Ethan, just me being familiar with your work and just seeing your revisions and like just seeing how you've grown has been really beautiful. So thank you, everyone. Thanks so much, Eastwind, Kat, everyone. Thank you.
Yeah, I really want to add to being very appreciative of listening to all the diverse voices, powerful Southeast Asian American voices. I really feel like there's still a lot of room for us to unpack and explore as writers, whether it's in poetry or literature, in the movie space, and all art spaces. Let's really express ourselves and continue to do that. One thing I'm very appreciative of as well is like the anthologies, like the SASC anthology and the poetry books that are out there, and East Wind supporting and all of that. I feel like, you know, let's continue to do this because, you know, all writers are welcome, you know, in C spaces. We just need to continuously create and be visible. I think the most important thing when I realized who I was how invisible we were, you know, and I think this is a way to combat that, to resist that notion, right? That we must create our own path when it comes to writing and identity and having dialogue about us. It should come from us. So thank you all for doing that.
I think we have a question from two people. I think Melanie came first and then Grayson. So maybe we can end with these two questions, Kat. Is that okay? Yeah.
Yeah, if everybody else is okay with not taking up, because I know we've gone a little bit over time, so I hope nobody else minds. Okay.
I feel like it took time for folks to like warm up to questions, but I'd be down to hear Melanie. Go ahead.
Okay. Melanie, you can go first, and Grayson, you can go first. I mean, go second. Is that okay? And feel free to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Sorry, I was formulating my thoughts. I just want to piggyback on what everybody else has said, and I'm a second year fiction MFA at San Diego State, and I'm Cambodian, Thai Chinese, and growing up as a writer, I don't see myself anywhere. And I just want to say being in this space and getting to experience his poetry is just, it's like the most refreshing experience, and finally being able to see myself in writing. And then I had a quick question for both Monica and Krysada as writers, because my family has no idea what the heck I'm doing. They think that I want to be a teacher. Trying to explain to them that I write is very difficult. And I'm actually a fiction writer, and I've just discovered poetry. I'm taking a poetry workshop, so I'm still kind of learning the ropes. And so this has been really cool. But I'm curious to know, you know, for both you, Monica and Krysada, and coming up in your writing careers, like, did you experience any sort of tension with your family? How did you kind of bridge that understanding, and like, where are they now? Hope that question makes sense.
Yeah, Melanie, thank you so much for being here. My journey is really interesting because I would go on these like fellowships and residencies, and my parents didn't really get what I was doing, and they'd just be like, when are you gonna get a job? And I remember like getting this fellowship at Stanford a few years ago, and I told them, you know, that I'm going to be in California, and they were like, okay, when are you going to get a job? So I totally hear you with that struggle to bridge that gap, but I don't know if it was important for me, for my family to really get it, you know, but it was actually my mother who said, maybe just try, like when I started to do my MFA. And, you know, I think that like, I think that it's still, like having a book come out, I think has helped them kind of see what I have been cultivating over the last few years. So I don't know, like I'm curious to know about you, Krysada, like what do you think, what do your parents think you're doing? What does your family think you're doing?
Yeah, first off, Melanie, thank you. You're in San Diego State, so perhaps when everything's safe, we could have like a talk about this in closer detail. For me, I always had I don't know if I should cuss, but you know, I don't give a damn attitude. Like, yes, I love my family, I love everything, but there's always going to be criticism coming your way, even from the people that you love or those that love you back. And there's always a sense of concern, especially when it comes to your family, right? But I think one thing that became tangible to my family was the fact that, yes, as scary as it is, I'm documenting stories of my family or the Lao American community. And I think that if you can convince them, you don't have to convince them, but the thing is, even if you write fiction, you're still representing that narrative, right? And that is something very powerful, and that's something that can go beyond the idea of like, oh, you're gonna be a doctor or a lawyer, you're gonna get a degree from this X, Y, Z. It's like, no, like I'm documenting where we come from. I'm documenting our journey, even in the fiction space. And I think that's something that needs to be emphasized when it comes to those that question or criticize your motives. Because that's what it is for me. I mean, when I break, I don't care. It's truly me. You really gotta love what you do, and continuously, I would urge you to try to publish, even in journals, even in anthology spaces, just anywhere, and just kind of keep building that. As Monica said, like, you know, she did a lot of fellowships, and then we're continuously practicing as writers, or you know, like, you're gonna keep building that until the point that it finally breaks, and all of a sudden they say you're a breakout star overnight, but it's not really overnight. It's decades worth of this stuff. So I would say keep writing, and really be strong with your convictions, because maybe eventually they'll get it, but the thing is, it's really not up to anyone except you to express yourself. So, like, go for that. And then when they finally catch up, you'll be like, where were you? You know, like, where were you? It's okay though. You don't gotta hate on anything, but that's how I continuously create in the things I do in life. People don't understand it, but it's for you first, you know, to be alive.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing in Krysada, and like what Krysada is saying too, is like, just give yourself the permission to do what you love, which is what I also tell my people too, like my students and my friends, you know, just give yourself the permission. But yeah, I don't know. I think it like, I love that, like, writing about my family has helped me tell them, like, this is what I'm doing. You know, it concerns like our relationship, our history, our memory. But like, I think that now that I've finished this first book, I'm just trying to go towards another space. And I don't think it really, I don't know if it concerns me too much at this time for my family to understand like what I'm doing, you know, because I feel very like secure in like just my relationship to my craft and the struggle that I have with that. Like, that's where my struggle is now. It's not necessarily with like my family's approval. So I hope you just give yourself the permission to just keep doing what you're doing as well. I think we had like one more person. I think Grayson wanted to ask a question. So thank you, Melanie. Grayson, you can unmute yourself too and talk.
Okay, cool. Hi, I'm Grayson. I'm also from Kumeyaay land, you know, from San Diego. And I attended this event because I'm a big fan of Krysada's work.
Cool.
Yeah, and I was really, really glad I was able to attend and be exposed to everyone else's work. Thank you, Monica. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Anvi. Because, you know, growing up, I was really not proud of my heritage, right? Like, I'm one of the many Southeast Asian Americans who wish that I was one of the quote cool Asians, unquote, you know, where people would like actually have heard of my country and, well, or my specific ethnic group, or actually have heard of like my martial arts and food and stuff. And just seeing people like Krysada get their work out there, and you know, seeing Southeast Asian representation and seeing people, you know, kick ass, it meant a lot to me. But I wanted to ask, oh, well, I mean, I also just want to add, Anvi, thank you specifically for sharing your story, because I happen to be a trans guy, and I also didn't expect to see that experience represented, and, you know, that also meant a lot to me. But I wanted to ask you all, what are what are some things that helped you, I guess, overcome the stigma of being Southeast Asian and being from less appreciated and well-known ethnic groups.
Grayson, thank you for bringing that up. We should also meet in San Diego. And sorry, I was frozen for a little bit. So the question was, yeah, how do we show the world, you know, who we are, right? And just be unapologetically Southeast Asian. Seriously, you don't need validation from other groups, from anybody. You don't need that kind of validation. What you need to do is, again, be who you are and be proud of your identity and your history. Wear that on your sleeve. Wear that on your shoulders. And whatever industry, whatever medium you choose to express that, always add that Southeast Asian narrative or your identity. Like, for example, for me, it's not always going to be like, oh, look, I'm a Lao poet, I'm a Lao dancer, I'm a Lao this and that. But it's also like, no, yeah, in my poems, I'll speak in Lao. I'll say tamakung instead of papaya salad. Just be unapologetic about it, as if it was normal. You know, your life to me is normal. You know, we appreciate all the diversity of the folks in this space, and be unapologetic about it in other spaces. That's really how I navigate. It's like I'm not trying to make it easy for you, right? I'm a very welcoming person when it comes to my art, but it's also no, I'm not gonna bend. I'm not gonna try to compromise who I am just to be accepted, whether it's in Hollywood or breaking or the education space. It's like, no, just don't waste your energy on that. Spend a lot more time in your technique and your creative process and your story, and you will thank yourself for that. And that's how I would answer that question. You know, we always talk about normalizing, right? So let's start making all this stuff normal, right? Whether it's our identity, sexuality, or gender, whatever. Like, we're here now. We're not going back. There's no going back. That's just what I want to end with.
Yeah, thank you, Grayson. I'm just trying to recall like the wording around your question too. It seems there's a word overcome in that as well. Like, how do you overcome in a way like erasure or invisibility as a Southeast Asian? I think it's really important to, and this kind of goes with the other question too that we had just responded to. I think it's important to know that you are whole as you are in every single moment. No matter how you are feeling or how the external world will treat you, you're whole as you are. And I think that's just so incredibly important to really just embrace. Because I don't think you know, once you go inward, once you really know yourself and trust yourself, you don't really need the other language is just distraction to me, you know. Everything else that tries to diminish you is distraction. You cannot be diminished if you only if you give permission to other people to do that to you. But only if you give the world permission to do that, like, you know, that's the only way. But if you name yourself, you write your narratives, you just fully accept like your wholeness. I think that's really a way to overcome that notion of invisibility, erasure, that very issue. I hope that helps. But those are really, really big questions. But just knowing that you're whole as you are. Thank you.
And like, if I could just riff off of Monica, I think you're bringing up distraction reminds me of that really powerful Toni Morrison quote, you know, which folks might be familiar with. Race, like the function, I'm going to paraphrase, but the function of racism is distraction. We were told to prove that you have a language, you spend years proving you have a language, and then like there's always going to be another thing. And so I think when the question of like underrepresentation and invisibility comes up, it's like who who are we asking for visibility from? Is it from the structures of white supremacy? Is it from neoliberal capital? Like who do we need to be visible to? And I think that because when it comes to white supremacy, when it comes to capital, it's never going to be enough, you know? Our being human has been diminished since the onset of imperialism in 1492. It has been more than 500 years, and it is still not enough. And I don't know, I feel like history is on my side when I say it's never going to be enough for white supremacy, no matter how visible we make ourselves, no matter how much research we put out, no matter how much culture we generate. It's never going to be enough. And but the flip side of that is that it's never going to be enough for them, but we already have each other. We've already been enough from the beginning, and we do not need to have our humanity measured by someone else's measuring stick. And that is, you know, sharing space here like this is about affirming that radical enoughness of our being, where I think that, like, I am enough, my ancestors remind me that I am enough, y'all remind me that I am enough, and that's what it means to hold space here.
Enoughness sounds such like a cool word. Sounds like a book title. Just kidding.
And Neil, I noticed that you raised your hand, but I do need to wrap up this event. Unfortunately, we have definitely gone way over time, and I don't want to like spend any more of our wonderful poet and writers like time, but they can feel free to leave any of their contacts, like their websites and their socials. So if you have any questions left over that has not been answered or you thought of later, feel free to contact any of them. So Jessica, Monica, Ethan, and Krysada, and I'm sure they would be happy to answer you. I do have two announcements from Eastwinds. So one is that we have a 20% off on all the books, poetry books featured today. So for Monica Sock's A Nail the Evening Hangs On, Krysada's Every Passing Minute, and Dance Among Elephants. So feel free to purchase them and check them out at Asia Book Center. Also, Ethan's books, Doorkeeper, really cool graphic novel. I'm so sorry, I didn't make that connection earlier. And the second announcement I want to make that was touched upon was SASC Anthology. So SASC is the Southeast Asian Student Coalition that was started in 2000 by 4 students. And I think we already touched a little bit upon the Southeast Asian diaspora and identity. And so SASC has done a wonderful job throughout the years, like over like 21 years, to really help bring an understanding about this history of diaspora and helping students, you know, grow in comfort with their identity and celebrating that. And so in celebration of the 45th anniversary of the Southeast Asian diaspora, there will be a collection of works from all of the folks of SASC titled The Blood in Our Veins, The Roots to Our Trees. And I ask that you all please follow up with us at Eastwinds, Eastwind Books in Instagram, or follow up with our website to keep in touch with the release of this anthology. And with that, we will be having some upcoming events in April, so please feel free to check it out if you enjoy events just like this. We will be having a book talk with Bernadette about her book, Empire's Mistress, and about empowering women and youth with the author of Mountain Sings and also the founder of Pacific Links Foundation. So thank you for joining us, and I hope you all have a wonderful day to your lovely Saturday. And feel free to unmute yourselves. Again, pretend this is the community space. You're just like cheering on. Yeah.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Catherine, and
thank you, Eastwind.
Yeah, thank you, Eastwind. Thank you to the staff and the writers.
Thank you. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Bye, guys.
Much love, everyone.